ever read a story that you can totally relate with? Something that reminds you of yourself and your experiences? Or perhaps a story you feel tells a relevant and meaningful subject? If that's the case, then you're practicing one of the most important reading comprehension skills. Today, we'll talk about the different ways of connecting to text. But before that, let's read this excerpt from President Obama's presidential proclamation, which was delivered during Martin Luther King Jr. Day on January 15, 2010. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. challenged our nation to recognize that our individual liberty relies upon our common equality. In communities marked by division and injustice, the movement he built from the ground up forced open doors to negotiation. The strength of his leadership was matched only by the power of his words, which still call on us to perfect those sacred ideals enshrined in our founding documents. We have an opportunity to make America a better nation, Dr. King said on the eve of his death. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as people will get to the promised land. Though we have made great strides since the turbulent era of Dr. King's movement, his work and our journey remain unfinished. Only when our children are free to pursue their full measure of success, unhindered by the color of their skin, their gender, the faith in their heart, the people they love, or the fortune of their birth, will we have reached our destination. Today, we are closer to fulfilling America's promise of economic and social justice because we stand on the shoulders of giants like Dr. King. Yet, our future progress will depend on how we prepare our next generation of leaders. We must fortify their ladders of opportunity by correcting social injustice, breaking the cycle of poverty in struggling communities, and reinvesting in our schools. Education can unlock a child's potential and remains our strongest weapon against injustice and equality. Recognizing that our nation has yet to reach Dr. King's promised land is not an admission of defeat, but a call to action. In these challenging times, too many Americans face limited opportunities, but our capacity to support each other remains limitless. Today, let us ask ourselves what Dr. King believed to be life's most urgent and persistent question. What are you doing for others? Now this time, let's try to answer the following questions. Number 1. On the eve of his death, what did Dr. King say about the opportunity that we have to do? You can find the answer in the second paragraph. We have an opportunity to make America a better nation, Dr. King said on the eve of his death. Dr. King would like to tell his people that the country, the nation, can still become better. He may not be able to reach that destination with them, but sooner it will be possible. Number 2. Even after his death, Dr. King has continued challenging the Americans to make America a better nation. What evidence from the text supports this conclusion? Dr. King had mentioned about the Promised Land. The Promised Land is where you did not have to march for your dignity. It was where you did not have to sing for your freedom. Was where there was no need for speeches to verify your humanity. The Promised Land was a sacred place where all of God's children would stand as equals on level, fertile ground. Number 3. Based on the speech, what can you infer about the economic and social justice in America? Dr. King talked about basic civil rights, honoring human dignity, and supporting equal opportunity for everyone. The Promised Land is a code for a better, more humanitarian, and equitable life experience. With this, we can infer that America has yet to reach the Promised Land, but they are close to fulfilling the promise of economic and social equality. Number 4. Based on this proclamation, how could Americans support each other in bringing America closer to Dr. King's promised land of equality and opportunity? Support your answers with an evidence from the text. Americans can continue their journey towards equality by empowering individuals, strengthening communities, bridging barriers, and create solutions to social problems. Dr. King believed that strength came from a community working together as a whole, and we can do that by alleviating poverty, ending racism, and creating a mutual understanding and love between people. Number 5. In the last paragraph of the text, what did President Obama try to persuade people to do? Do you think this could also be applied in the current situation of our country? Explain your answer. President Obama persuaded his people to keep supporting one another. One great lesson we can learn from Dr. King is his propensity to spread love and not hate, to be a voice for others and lead with compassion. In these days of pandemic stress, crime, corruption, political turmoil, and poverty, it is important that people rise together to counter it. Thanks to the strength of community, both geographical and digital, the people of the Philippines are finding innovative ways of coping with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and other relevant issues in our country. Yet, we still have to continue asking ourselves as to what we could do to further serve our community. Dr. King's question of what are you doing for others should be a constant reminder that a spirit of volunteerism is necessary to a successful life and society. To me, King communicated this message not to the right people for failing to serve, but to be a gentle reminder of its importance. A simple act of service possesses the power to transform lives, in addition to reinforcing key principles of selflessness, leadership, and engagement. By inspiring us to serve others and work within our communities, King is bringing us that much closer to his vision of a nation comprised of citizens championing equality and peace. You might have not noticed, but your previous experiences, knowledge, emotions, and understanding affect what and how you learn. Called a schema, your background knowledge and experiences actually help you make sense and meaning of the material you are exposed to. Schema is the background knowledge and experience readers bring to the text. Good readers draw on prior knowledge and experience to help them understand what they are reading, and are thus able to use that knowledge to make connections. Struggling readers often move directly to a text without stopping to consider whether the text makes sense based on their own background knowledge, or whether their knowledge can be used to help them understand confusing or challenging materials. Learning how to access this prior knowledge, experiences, emotions, and opinions can help you make a connection to help you understand concepts better. Making connections is a critical reading comprehension strategy that helps students like you make meaning of what they're reading. Kane and Zimmerman 1997 concluded that students comprehend better when they make different kinds of connections. And we have three kinds: text to self, text to text, and text to word. Now let's discuss each one of them. Text to self. Text to self connections are highly personal connections that a reader makes between a piece of reading material and the reader's own experiences or life. We all have experiences, and we can use that to make more insightful and complex connections. If you have more limited experiences, you may struggle to make connections or create vague general connections. But if you have a wide range of experiences, that will be an advantage for you. An example of a text-to-self connection might be, upon reading a story, for example, you will say, "This story reminds me of a vacation we took to my grandfather's farm." So text-to-self is when you read a text and you feel that you have a personal connection to the story or to the text, let's say based on one of your experiences. You can ask the following questions. What does this remind me of in my life? What is this similar to in my life? How is this different from my life? Has something like this ever happened to me? How does this relate to my life? What were my feelings when I read this? Now, how about text to text? Sometimes when reading, we are reminded of other things that we have read, other books by the same author, stories from a similar genre, or perhaps on the same topic. So these types of connections are text-to-text connections. You make connections that show how the books share the same author, have similar characters, events, or settings, are the same genre, or are on the same topic. So a solid text-to-text connection occurs when a student is able to apply what they have read from one text to another text. Readers gain insight during reading by thinking about how the information they are reading connects to other familiar texts. For example, this character has the same problem in the book that I have read last year. Okay? Or another example is, I read another book about spiders that explained that spiders have venom, and in this book, I am learning about the top 10 dangerous spiders of the world. So here, I'm comparing one text about spiders explaining how spiders have venom, and I have here another text telling us about the top 10 dangerous spiders of the world. Now, these are the questions that you could ask so that you could make a text-to-text connections.
What does this remind me of in another book I've read? How is this text similar to other things I've read? How is this different from other books I've read? And have I read about something like this before? Lastly, we have text to word. Text to word connections are the larger connections that a reader brings to our reading situation. We all have ideas about how the world works that goes far beyond our own personal experiences. We learn about things through television, movies, magazines, and newspapers, right? Often, it is the text to word connections that teachers are trying to enhance when they teach lessons in science, social studies, and literature. So effective text-to-word connections happen when students can use what they have learned through these mediums to enhance their understanding of the text that they are reading. An example of a text-to-word connection would be when a reader says, "I saw a program on television that talked about things described in this article." Or another example is, "I saw on the news about how water pollution was affecting marine animals. And in this book, I am learning about why pollution can make a marine animal sick." Okay, so I'm reading a book about how pollution can make a marine animal sick, but at the same time, I'm connecting it to a larger issue, which of course I have seen, let's say, on a news TV program about water pollution, about the same topic. Here are the questions that you could ask so that you could make a connection from text to world. What does this remind me of in the real world? How is this text similar to things that happen in the real world? How is this different from things that happen in the real world? How did that part relate to the world around me? How you relate yourself to the character of King Arthur in the book King Arthur and His Knights of the Round Table by Roger Lansing Green is text-to-self connection. The way you compare the theme of the novels written by Nicholas Sparks to each other is text-to-text connection. And relating real-life issues and scenarios to things read from a selection, on the other hand, is text-to-world connection. All three of these connections are most meaningful and effective when students are able to make deep, complex, and insightful connections to the text, rather than vague, general, or superficial connections. Now this time, let's talk about making annotations.
The best way to remember and associate your experiences with those presented in any text is by annotating. Annotating is to make marks on the text. It is not simply highlighting appealing words or sentences, though you will most likely end up highlighting the entire selection. It is a purposeful strategy to help you comprehend what you are reading on a deeper level than if you were to just read it straight through. It is an excellent way to deconstruct the text into meaningful pieces for better understanding. Its main goal is to make connections between what you already know about practically anything and the world around you.
There are 4 major benefits of annotating, according to Azevedo 2017. First, it makes you more engaged in the material. Second, it slows your reading that helps you focus on details and have better retention and comprehension. Third, it helps you process what you are reading. And lastly, it records textual evidence for later reference. You may even note your questions for further research. By annotating text, you will ensure that you understand what is happening in a text after you've read it. As you annotate, you should note the author's main points, shifts in the message or perspective of the text, key areas to focus, and your own thoughts as you read. However, annotating isn't just for people who feel challenged when reading academic text. Even if you regularly understand and remember what you read, annotating will help you summarize a text, highlight important pieces of information, and ultimately prepare yourself for discussion and writing prompts that your instructor may give you. Annotating means you are doing the hard work while you read, allowing you to reference your previous work and have a clear jumping off for future work. Azevedo 2017 added that the following annotation strategies may be used. Number 1, you may circle any unfamiliar words, then look them up and write down the definition. Second, use question marks to indicate areas of uncertainty. Let's say, for example, you're reading a certain text and you are not certain as to what the author is trying to say, then you could add question marks. Number 3, use stars to indicate anything that seems important, such as themes, symbols, foreshadowing, etc. 4, use exclamation points to indicate something dramatic or a key turning point. So this is very useful, especially if you are reading a story. Number 5, circle or mark somehow character names anytime they are introduced for the first time so that you will remember these names. Number 6, keep a list somewhere, maybe on the inside cover, of all the characters and their traits, and to this list as new characters are introduced or as you learn more about existing characters. 7, write your notes in the margins. Okay, that's one of the best methods that we have, or on sticky notes, or in a separate notebook. Number 8, paraphrase or summarize each chapter after you finish reading it. You only need a few sentences to do this. Write them down at the beginning or end of the chapter. Number 9, write down any questions you have about the text, either questions you're willing to wait to find out the answer as you read further, or questions you want to bring up to your teacher in the class next day. Use a color-coded system if that type of thing appeals to you. And number 11, give each chapter a title. So after you finish reading each chapter, go back to its title page and give it a title.
To make it more engaging and interesting, you may also use illustrated annotations, which use images to represent concepts and elements. The creation of illustrations may help you synthesize information and at the same time may help increase creativity and engagement while reading. They make annotating text a more hands-on experience and learning more meaningful and personal. Like many skills, annotating takes practice. Remember that the main goal for doing this is to give you a strategy for reading text that may be more complicated and technical than what you are used to.
Now this time, let's practice our connecting and annotating skills. Let's read the selection that we had just discussed earlier. So go back to the article, an excerpt from President Obama's presidential proclamation. In your notebook or answer sheet, copy and accomplish the Community Connection Reading Response graphic organizer as shown on your screen. They're going to answer the following questions. This article reminds me of my community because... So try to relate the text and its meaning towards what's happening to your community. How can you possibly relate equality and working together to what is actually happening now? Number 2, the problem in this article is, and after identifying the problem, you also have to consider as to how we could fix that problem. And lastly, draw a picture or representation of what you have read. So based on the message of the article, draw a picture or any symbols that you could use that represent what you have read or understood from the passage. So I hope this video had helped you identify the different ways in which we could connect ourselves to text and the different ideas that we could use in annotating text. Thank you so much for watching and good luck on your module.